Reports of worsening panic buying in China. Some have even been spotted fighting over goods in stores. This amid concerns over possible repeat pandemic lockdowns. Donated organs come with official price tags in China. 6 provincial departments co-released a price guide for transplants. But critics say it may encourage killing for profit. 14 candidates are forced to withdraw from an upcoming election in Beijing. Police threatened them over not being appointed by the communist government. China's nuclear threat level has increased 150% over the past year. That's according to the newest Pentagon report on China. And U.S. Customs has detained products from the world's largest solar cell manufacturer. The Chinese company is accused of involvement in Xinjiang's human rights violations. Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Panic buying continues in China and seems to get worse. The Chinese Communist Party, or CCP virus, spread to about 20 provinces in the country on Thursday. On Wednesday, more than 100 people tested positive for the virus. This, according to state-controlled media. We cannot verify the numbers, but in China, it's commonly believed that the real number is often higher than the official reports. Even if Beijing underreported the numbers, this would still be a big change to the so-called zero-case policy that led to extremely strict pandemic control measures. Earlier this week, amidst the rising cases, Chinese authorities suggested residents should stockpile. This rare move seemed to trigger even more concern and uncertainty. According to local media in Zhengzhou City, customers used to place their items in bags, but now they are filling their carts to the rim. And they are not only buying food, but also laundry detergent, toothpaste, toilet paper, and disinfectant. One of the customers told local media she had already bought 150 pounds of rice and the same amount of flour. Her reason? She says the authorities suggested that citizens stockpile, and she also feared that she would not be able to go out to shop while under lockdown. The same is happening in many other areas around the country. People even fight with each other while panic buying. Rice is one of the most wanted foods right now. A customer from southwest China's Chongqing city says that all noodles, rice, and even eggs are sold out. In a central Chinese province, 6 provincial ministries co-released price tags for donated organs. While many criticize the move as unethical and said it encourages crime, an expert investigator tells us that harvesting organs for profit isn't new for the Chinese Communist Party.
6 provincial ministries in the central Chinese province of Henan co-announced a list of fees provided for organ donations. Under the list, patients have to pay a so-called donated organ acquisition fee. That's more than $40,000 for an adult liver, more than $15,000 for a child's liver, more than $25,000 for a single kidney, and nearly $36,000 for both. U.S.-based news outlet Radio Free Asia quoted Professor Yang Haiying from Shizuoka University in Japan as saying the announcement may encourage severe social problems, such as killing for organs, kidnapping, and murder. The head of the World Organization to investigate the persecution of Falun Gong, Dr. Wang Jiyuan, raised another issue. The global community has long held deep concern about the source of organs for transplantation in China. China's domestic organ harvesting industry has soared since 1999, with China soon becoming the second largest in the business worldwide. But the origins of large numbers of those organs remain unknown. In 2006, in the U.S., 2 witnesses exposed a lucrative business of the CCP, mass harvesting organs from Falun Gong practitioners in China. For many years, allegations of the CCP's organ harvesting have been included in human rights reports from the United Nations, the U.S. Department of State, and Congress. Multiple countries, including the U.S., Australia, Canada, Taiwan, and EU member states, have passed resolutions condemning CCP's organ harvesting. Some have passed laws prohibiting their citizens from organ transplant tourism in China. As more eyes turn to the CCP's organ harvesting crimes in prisons and labor camps, Wang says the official announcement may have been designed to distract the public.
First, it diverts the attention from questioning the Chinese Communist Party's illegal organ transplant practices. Second, these price tags clearly say organs can be traded. According to our investigations, the CCP has been collecting fees for organs the whole time.
According to a phone conversation record provided by an investigator, a hospital in Henan charges nearly $94,000 for a liver transplant. Following is the phone conversation between the investigator and a doctor from the hospital's office from years ago.
那要咱做那个移植的话，这个留下来多少钱？
回头再说吧。
这个因为我们没有不走医保嘛，我们得自费，我们在这边没有。
具体情况具体看吧。
具体大概呢要多少钱？告诉我。
大概需要60吧。
60左右吧，60万。
That's not only in Henan province. More proof emerged from the southwestern province of Sichuan. An investigator pretended to search for an organ from a Falun Gong practitioner, as the organs from these people are considered to be of high quality. Here's the phone conversation with the doctor.
就是想让他帮我找一个就是那种法轮功的那种器官，因为我觉得花钱也值得嘛。
其实大家都觉得值得，都愿意花钱的哈。你的那心态都理解哈。
那咱们这个正常，如果就是那种做一个手术那个流程下来，大概得需要多少钱呢？
这个不一定，我现在不能跟你说哈，有好的，有不好的，但光是供体费，我们省医院是15万，我只能跟你说这个哈。
Does China have honest elections? Friday is election day for local People's Congress in China. 14 politically independent candidates said they had to stop running. In a joint statement earlier this week, they said they did so for their personal safety and freedom. Members of the People's Congress at the local level are directly elected, according to Chinese law. But the candidates are all appointed by the Communist Party. The 14 independent candidates were running for Beijing City's local People's Congress. Some of them are wives of human rights lawyers who were arrested by authorities in recent years. Others have been fighting for their rights under the communist regime for years. And before they withdrew from the election, they were reportedly harassed every day by police or unidentified people. In their statement, they said since they announced their candidacy, the police had started keeping a close eye on 10 of them. Some of the candidates were taken to police stations. Some were even threatened with the forced demolition of their homes. 2 of them were even removed from Beijing by police. As a result, they had no choice but to withdraw from the race. Their withdrawal came just a few days before Election Day. Authorities canceled the professional license of a lawyer in Beijing. That's because he had defended dissidents in China and Hong Kong.
Human rights lawyer Lin Qilei's license was canceled on the last day of October. Lin had represented a large number of what the authorities called sensitive cases, including defending 12 pro-democracy Hong Kong protesters. They were caught en route to Taiwan on a boat after the Chinese Communist Party enforced the so-called national security law in Hong Kong. But this is not the official reason the lawyer's license was canceled. The official reason is that no law firm has accepted him within the past 6 months after his own law firm was forcibly closed, and they said this process was lawful. But Lin Qilei said he had signed a contract with a law firm and submitted the document to the Justice Bureau, but he never received a reply.
The reason is obviously reversing black and white, because I have submitted written documents to the Beijing Chaoyang District Justice Bureau within the legal period, telling them that a law firm in Chaoyang District, Beijing, had hired me and signed a contract.
Lin said this is a common way the regime suppresses human rights lawyers. An Epoch Times reporter called the lawyers' department of the Chaoyang District Justice Bureau but couldn't get through. The authorities closed Lin's law firm early this year, but Lin said the suppression already started years ago.
From June 2018, the Beijing Municipal Bureau of Justice and the Chaoyang District Justice Bureau have made it difficult for us. They didn't accept the annual assessment reports from our law firm, which means that we were not subjected to the annual assessment, and this led us almost to a state of suspension.
Another human rights lawyer from China, Ren Kuan-yu, pointed out that the authorities' suppression of the legal profession has never stopped.
This is a manifestation of retaliation or punishment against human rights lawyers. They won't stop suppressing lawyers who have independent thinking and want to handle cases independently.
Together with Lin, Ren represented the 12 pro-democracy Hong Kong protesters in their legal battle last year. That is until the regime assigned its own official lawyers to the protesters. This despite the protesters' family members having already engaged Lin and Ren's services. Ren also defended one of the citizen reporters who revealed the real situation in Wuhan in the early days of the pandemic. Ren's license was canceled earlier this year.
China's nuclear threat level has more than doubled compared to 2020, according to a recent assessment from the Pentagon. In the Defense Department's annual China Military Power Report on Wednesday, it estimated that the accelerating pace of the PLA's nuclear expansion may enable the PRC, People's Republic of China, to have up to about 700 deliverable nuclear warheads by 2027. And by 2030, the report says, the PRC likely intends to have at least 1,000 warheads. This new estimated figure is a sharp increase from what the DoD projected just last year. In its 2020 report, the Pentagon warned that the Chinese arsenal would top 400 by the end of the decade. That's more than a twofold difference compared to the DoD's current projections. The report also says that China may already have developed the ability to launch ballistic missiles from land, air, and sea, and points out that China is clear in its ambitions to be competitive with world-class military powers like the U.S. Though China's nuclear power is still dwarfed by the U.S., the United States has a stockpile of 3,750 nuclear warheads. On Thursday, the Chinese Foreign Ministry commented on the Pentagon's assessment. It said the report is full of prejudice and is based on gossip. A top security official in Taiwan said Beijing had internally debated whether to attack Taiwan. He also said Beijing wouldn't do so before 2024. National Security Bureau Director General Chen Ming-tong made the remarks on Thursday to Taiwanese lawmakers, but he didn't say how he knew, nor did he explain why the attack would not be immediate. Beijing didn't respond to a request for comment. On Wednesday, the chairman of the U.S.'s House Intelligence Committee urged the Biden administration to take a much clearer stance on Taiwan. At the Aspen Security Forum, Representative Adam Schiff referred to what he called the U.S.'s obligation to defend Taiwan from attack by China. The strategic ambiguity over Taiwan has been a long-term policy of Washington's to balance their relationship with the communist regime in mainland China. And also on Wednesday at the Aspen Security Forum, the top U.S. general said China is unlikely to try to attack Taiwan within 2 years. General Mark Milley said Beijing is clearly building up its military capability. Although he said he doesn't believe there will be military action in the near future, he added, but anything can happen. Another Chinese company is now facing U.S. sanctions over labor abuses. On Wednesday, China's solar cell giant LONGi reported having shipments detained by U.S. Customs over the course of nearly a week. Accused of supporting human rights abuses in Xinjiang, the company is the latest in the industry targeted by Washington's clampdown on labor abuses. The order was carried out under a ban on Chinese solar products issued in June. The ban prohibits imports from solar panel makers that have been linked to Xinjiang-based Hoshine silicon industry. The company produces silicon metal that's used in solar panel manufacturing. That means LONGi would join Jinko Solar and Trina Solar from China and Canadian Solar from Canada on the list of solar panel makers that have had modules stopped in recent months. All of them have alleged ties to Hoshine silicon industry. Beijing has long denied the existence of forced labor in the country's western region, where it's accused of suppressing Uyghurs and other Muslim minorities. LONGi is the world's largest solar panel maker. The company dominates the U.S. solar panel market. According to a statement issued by the company, the detained modules used silicon material that meets U.S. requirements. China's foreign ministry urged the U.S. on Thursday to, quote, immediately correct its mistakes. The European Parliament's first official delegation to Taiwan said on Thursday the diplomatically isolated island is not alone. They called for bolder actions to strengthen EU-Taiwan ties as the island faces rising pressure from Beijing. Flora Bradley-Watson reports.
You are not alone. That was the message EU lawmakers had for Taiwan on Thursday during their first official visit to the island.
Our visit shows
the EU delegation is seeking to foster stronger ties with Taipei as it faces rising pressure from Beijing. China claims democratically ruled Taiwan as its own, and has not ruled out taking it by force. The 3-day visit will include exchanges with Taiwanese officials on threats such as disinformation and cyber attack. French MEP Raphael Glucksmann leads the delegation.
We came here with a very simple, very clear message. You are not alone. Europe is standing with you, by you, in the defense of freedom and the defense of rule of law and human dignity. We are all in the same boat in this worldwide confrontation between authoritarian regimes and democracies. And it's high time for us in the European Union to show that we are in the same boat. So our visits should be considered as an important first step.
Taiwan does not have formal diplomatic ties with any European nation except tiny Vatican City. Fearing retaliation from Beijing, most countries are unwilling to host senior Taiwanese ministers or send high-level officials to the island. Beijing has been quick to respond to Thursday's meeting, accusing Europe of sending the wrong signals to separatist forces in Taiwan. During a media briefing, China's foreign ministry said the European side should correct its mistake.
South Korean President Moon Jae-in is calling for a declaration that could end a state of war with the North. This state of war has lasted since the 1950s. This is Moon's last-ditch attempt to talk to the other side before his term ends next year. Gloria Tso reports.
South and North Korea are technically still at war, even though the fighting ended 6 decades ago. But that could all change very soon. It's South Korea's outgoing president, Moon Jae-in, who's leading the call to officially end the conflict. He wants a peace agreement on the Korean peninsula before his time is up in 2022. First, let's take a look at why the two Koreas are still at war. As the Korean War ground to a halt in 1953, South Korean leaders opposed the idea of a truce that left the peninsula divided. They refused to sign the armistice with military commanders from the North, the UN, and China, so the war was simply put on hold. In 2018, the idea of ending the war resurfaced most strongly when U.S. President Donald Trump, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, and South Korea's Moon came together in a flurry of diplomacy. The two Koreas agreed to declare the war over by the end of that year.
I've been told that Kim Jong-un would like to meet.
And Trump said he'd give the effort his blessing if North Korea agreed to give up its nuclear weapons. But as disagreements over sanctions on Pyongyang and its nuclear weapons dragged on, the talks hit a wall, and so did any discussion of ending the war. So what could potentially change the situation now? Reuters correspondent Josh Smith says the war on hold is seen as a key source of conflict by Moon and others.
This is kind of seen, the war and the division of the peninsula as kind of the original sin that's left, tensions high between North Korea and then South Korea and the United States. And so it's seen as a possible first step towards reducing some of those tensions.
In a speech to the United Nations in September, Moon once again raised the idea. South Korea is calling first for a political declaration that the Korean War is over, then a peace treaty that replaces the armistice, and finally the establishment of a broader peace regime.
Basically, where there's a lot of disagreements over things like nuclear weapons or the sanctions that were imposed because of North Korea's nuclear weapons, South Korea sees perhaps a little bit more agreement on, simply all sides saying, let's acknowledge reality. We're not fighting a literal war right now.
But what would actually change on the Korean peninsula in the case of a peace agreement? North Korean officials have responded to Moon's proposals with interest, but they've called them premature without changing what it claims to be hostile policy and double standards over denuclearization. Meanwhile, some analysts in the United States say that while a peace agreement is certainly possible, it can only be made after North Korea agrees to denuclearization.
Eventually, the idea of a peace treaty is that, according to, folks in South Korea, is that eventually that might, really drastically change some of the military stance here. There might be a reduction in troops, in theory, on all sides. Under the most optimistic scenarios that the South Korean President Moon Jae-in has talked about, that could potentially include things like a rail line that goes from South Korea all the way to Europe, because it can finally connect through North Korea, into Russia and across kind of thing.
Critics of Moon's proposals also worry that arriving at a peace agreement too soon could undermine U.S. deterrence in the region and potentially embolden North Korea militarily. American officials say they have discussed the potential end of war with their South Korean counterparts, but have not yet committed to a declaration.
China and Russia are pushing the United Nations Security Council to ease sanctions on North Korea. It involves a ban in Pyongyang's exports of statues, seafood, and textiles, and a cap for petroleum imports. Before the sanctions, this business earned North Korea hundreds of millions of dollars. The bans were issued in 2016 and 2017, trying to cut off funding for North Korea's nuclear and missile programs. U.S. sanctions monitors reported this summer that North Korea continued violating UN sanctions and developing its nuclear and missile programs this year. And that's all for today's China in Focus. Thanks for watching and see you tomorrow.